the part I like. Ah, come on. That's all right. Listen, if shoes could tell where they've been when you claim that you were visiting a friend, now ain't you glad? I know you ought to be glad that shoes don't talk. Oh, they never talk. Listen, in a world of trouble we'd be if things ever told on me. My love life would be through, 'cause I'm guilty. How about you? Listen, if things ever talk that way, there ain't no telling what they might say. So ain't you glad? Everybody ought to be glad that things don't talk. I tell you they don't talk. 'Cause I'm so glad that things don't talk. 'Cause if they did, I believe we all would be in a big world of trouble, baby. Ow! Things don't talk, and they'll never talk. You can do what you want.
You're just hella looking after number one. Only thing you worry about is having your fun. First sign of trouble, it's understood. You get going while the going's still good. You're so very unnecessarily mercenary. You're a secret agent, got a hidden agenda. Got me in your sights, think I'm a real big spender. Stick around, baby, pretty soon you'll see. I ain't got no money, but my love's for free. You're so very unnecessarily mercenary. You're a gun for hire when a war breaks out. Loving on the front line till the money runs out. Finger on the trigger, baby, pull it and see. If your mercenary tactics don't work on me.
Tampa's Architectural Review Commission. Welcome, everyone. My name is Zachary Greco, Chair of the Commission. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. Commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, and wall sections. Staff will then present the staff report, and we will then ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments, because 3 minutes go by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will be allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. Commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based upon the City Ordinance, Chapter 27 of the City Zoning Code, the Design Guidelines, the Secretary of the Interior Standards, the Historic Preservation Development Review HPDRC comments, and the testimony given at this public hearing. The ARC can only act on the items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner and agents are independently responsible to obtain appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence all cell phones. At this point, I will ask my fellow commissioners to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Susan Claus-Smith, Architect and Vice Chair.
Shauna Boyd, Interior Designer.
Ashley DeCubis, an attorney.
Stephen Sutton, architect. I also hold the architectural historian chair.
We're also joined here tonight by staff, Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Elaine Lund, Beverly Jewisak, and Kamaria Pettis-Mackel.
Good evening, Commissioners. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Will the Commissioners state for the record whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
I have
do
none.
not.
I have none.
Additionally, will the Commissioners state for the record whether or not they have had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are, anything that's listed on the agenda?
I have none.
I have not.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda for continuations. We have one this evening for case ARC T21-02 at 1704 Jeton Avenue. The applicant is requested to continue to the March 1st, 2021 public hearing. We would need a motion for this item.
I move to continue ARC T21-02 for the property located at 1704 Chaton Avenue to the March 1st, 2021 public hearing at 6 p.m.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And at this time, we'll have Beverly Jewisak swear in all parties in chambers who are speaking at the hearing.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will be providing this evening is the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we're ready to move on with the items to be reviewed this evening. For the record, I'm Elaine Lund, Architectural Review and Historic Preservation staff. The first item on the agenda this evening is ARC T21-01. This is an application for an ad valorem historic preservation tax exemption. The property is at 3108 North Jefferson Street in the Tampa Heights Historic District. I'm going to briefly go through a photo presentation and then the applicant will present their project. I'd like to note that this is a recommendation that you're making this evening to City Council to find whether or not the project was conducted in a manner consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. So looking at the photo presentation then, we have up on the screen the location map showing the Tampa Heights Historic District, the red and the blue boundaries, with the red being the local historic district and blue being the national historic district. You'll note that this particular property is located outside of the national but inside the local historic district. It is at the corner of Plymouth Street and Jefferson Street. This is the 1920 Sanborn map. This building was originally a kind of a factory. It was a light industrial. It was Graham's Bottling Works, a two-story masonry structure. This is the present-day aerial. You can see here, being at the corner of Plymouth Street and Jefferson Street again, the southwest corner. The building here does take up most of the property side, and then there's a parking lot along the west side of the building. So this is looking southwest at the structure from the corner of Plymouth and Jefferson. This is looking along Jefferson Street from the south. So we're looking northwest here. This is a view of the building looking southwest again, but you get more of a view of the Plymouth Street facade here. This is the south side of the structure. It runs along an alley. And this is the, the west side of the building here that is adjacent to the parking area. And then we have an image of the parking lot. So at this time, I'll ask the applicant to begin his presentation.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Michael Pilara, P-U-L-L-A-R-A. I'm the owner's agent for the project located at 3108 North Jefferson Street. The owner is here tonight to address any comments or concerns you might have. But I'm presenting documentation for post-rehabilitation construction for the ad valorem tax exemption. For orientation, I've got some architectural drawings. Start out with a site plan. Just for your orientation, the Jefferson Street is along the east property line. This is the main entry to the building, considered the front of the building. We are required to plant trees, a landscape buffer, 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk. Around on the north side of the building is Plymouth Street. We provided 3 street parking spaces and the city sidewalk. The west side of the property is the parking lot. There are 22 spaces. This is the secondary entry to the building. And in the southwest corner is a garbage dumpster enclosure. Quickly, just going into the interior of the building, there are 11 apartment units. There's a total of 11,178 square feet per floor. For life safety code reasons, we had to provide fire exits and fire egress stairs. East side of the building is our main entry. This is a recessed alcove. On the west side of the building, the parking lot side, there is the secondary entry alcove. Second story, very similar to the first. There's 11 apartments. They were set up based on the existing structural grid that we wanted to preserve, enhance, make it part of the design aesthetic. I'll show pictures of that later. This floor is also 11,178 for a total of 22,356 square feet. Moving to the elevations, just a before and after stacked. This is the east elevation along Jefferson Street. The second floor existing condition was the brick veneer had been removed to repair the terracotta structural block. All the windows were infilled with wood, plywood. These 2 openings on the south, east and northeast corners were garage door openings from original building. We wanted to preserve that look. So on the after condition, these garage door openings is made up of fixed wood window units molded together to give the illusion of a garage door opening. This is more like a storefront that's here and here. In the center of the building is our main entry alcove, and all windows have been replaced with new wood. Turning the corner, north side of the building, very similar. All windows were boarded up. After condition below is just showing that we've now replaced them with new wood windows, and we added 2 new windows here and here from the original facade. On the rear of the building, this would be the west side, the parking lot side. There was an 1-story non-contributing 1-story addition with flat roof. That's this dash line here. This was removed. The after condition is we have our secondary entry for the tenants. new windows installed. We created some new openings. That's these outlined in heavy, bold. We had to install a ship's ladder to get to the roof. The roof slopes to the rear of the building. There was a gutter and downspout system that we had to replace, and the electrical systems is a bank of meters. And then on the south side, original condition, boarded up windows. Here's the addition on the back, non-contributing, that was removed. And these are our new window openings. There were some new ones created here. Going into the photographic documentation. Before and after, this is the east elevation. You can see that the brick veneer was missing, exposing the terracotta block. Windows were boarded up. The after condition, all new windows, our main entry, our simulated garage door storefront openings, and the brick veneer was replaced or reinstalled. North elevation, Plymouth Street, original condition, windows were boarded up. Now we have new windows. 2 new window openings were created here and here. Rear of the building, west elevation, parking lot side. The 1-story addition was removed. This was piles of brick that was removed from the front elevation. They were salvaged. And then that's what's reinstalled on the front elevation. Now the after condition is we have new window openings, the meter banks, this ladder, the new gutter and downspout systems, and our secondary entry approximately right there. South elevation. This is the alley side. Boarded up windows are now new window openings. There were a few that we created new. This is the north elevation. It just shows how the non-contributing structure on the rear had been removed. Now we have this parking lot. This is one of those openings that was originally a garage door, and we created a storefront out of fixed window units, all wood, molded together. This was the what was original. It's a non-contributing or non-historic overhead garage door, and this is what we turned it into. Typical windows that were boarded up are now replaced with new. Going to the interior, this is the column and beam grid system. These were decorative looking. We wanted to preserve those. The after condition, we fashioned the layout of the units based on these columns. We wanted them to either be engaged or freestanding. All we did was seal them, clear coated them. Foot detail of the column. First floor condition was concrete. In some cases we had to trench the concrete to run plumbing pipes. After condition is patching the concrete, polishing it, clear coating it. Second floor and roof system. Second floor was just simply conventionally framed 2x12 joists. The roof system had to be completely rebuilt. These are new TJI joists and LVL beams. The columns on the second floor had been removed, so now they were just simple 6x6 posts. So downstairs is really what's left of the old original columns. After condition is we had to provide UL-rated floor ceiling assemblies, but the industrial aesthetic we were looking for was exposing ductwork, pipes, sprinkler lines, etc. In some cases, ceilings had to be dropped. This is an exterior wall before with original plaster, windows that are boarded up, windows were then replaced, new wood. The casings are simple 1x, flat stock painted, and we kept the original plaster and just sealed them with a clear coat. Second floor system was a patchwork of tongue and groove wood flooring, CDX plywood or OSB plywood. As part of the UL system, we had to apply a second layer on top of that original floor. So this is more of a finished grade plywood that was stained and then clear coated. And this shows often the background wood windows with the flat stock wood casings, where we were on an exterior wall and there was original plaster. In the before condition, the after was we left it that way. We're looking for that industrial aesthetic. The walls were then just clear coated. This is just again a close-up of the original doors, which were non-historic, overhead sectional, and our storefront, which emulates a garage door opening. Excuse me. These are just some miscellaneous items. East side, Jefferson Street is our main entry. It's an alcove. It's a series of wood glass doors with transoms. On the west elevation, our secondary entry from the parking lot is a single door with a side light. Typical lighting fixtures, these are on the front and rear of the building. And the trash enclosure in the back corner of the parking lot. And then along the south property line is the vacated alley. The neighbor has a wood fence which separates our property from the single-family residences around us. To sum up, we incorporated the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation throughout the project. The new adaptive reuse required minimal changes to the defining characteristics of the building. We preserved every salvageable feature wherever possible, such as reinstalling the historic brick on the Jefferson Street facade, the heavy timber columns and beams, the concrete floors, the plaster walls. If a feature was too deteriorated or missing, such as the garage doors, we installed new ones that match the historic material and design. Tonight we are seeking a final approval for the ad valorem tax credit, and we would very much appreciate your consideration. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Commissioners, for the staff report, so staff found that this project was consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and the design guidelines for the Tampa Heights Local Historic District. The Secretary of the Interior has 4 codified treatments for historic properties, and of these 4 treatments, only the rehabilitation treatment is the one that allows alterations and the constructions of additions where necessary for continuing use or new compatible use for the historic building. This is the same set of standards and guidelines rehabilitation that is used for the federal tax credit program. The rehabilitation standards acknowledge the need to make these alterations for newer continuing uses while retaining the building's historic character. The National Park Service provides guidance for projects in accordance with the treatments for historic properties. Excuse me. And they note that a project meets the standards when the overall effect of all work is consistent with the property's historic character. And I'd also like to note, just previously, the board did review part 1 of this application and approved part 1, and also made a recommendation to City Council regarding the rezoning application that was required for this project to be functional in its new use as an apartment building. And that PD was approved at City Council. So I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we will open the hearing to any public comment, either for or against. Seeing none, the commissioners will now ask questions. Would a commissioner like to begin?
I have one question regarding the signage on the front elevation. In the drawings, it indicated that you would be adding signage to the building, but it doesn't appear in the current images that we have. Is there still an intent to add some signage to that front facade?
We are prepared to install those letters, but for now, we installed a logo which represents the Bootlegger Factory Flats company logo. I've got a picture of that I can put up on the
Thank you.
This is currently what we have above the...
And that's inside. Oh, outside,
That's
right
on the
there,
outside
okay.
of the building.
So is it the intent of the owner to go ahead and put that signage up on the brick at the top, like your drawings indicate? I'm just trying to ascertain whether or not there was some sort of discussion in the first part about the signage as a component of the project.
Michael, if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right, I'm Michael Mintzberg, the applicant. You know, frankly, we made a decision to put the signage there closer to the door where people could see it, so that pedestrians looking for the building, you know, walking down the street or driving by, you're not going to see the sign all the way at the top of the building. I mean, you know, if it's make or break for getting ad valorem accepted, I'd put a sign up at the top as well, but we just thought that ended up being more functional for a pedestrian use and
Okay.
safer way to find the building.
Understood, thank you.
Yep.
That's all I have.
I have no question.
I don't have any questions either. I have no additional questions.
I don't have any questions as well. The applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
Do you want to say anything, Mike?
No, I don't have anything to say. Just thank you for hearing the application this evening.
Thank you. All right, well, at this point, we will close the public hearing. The commissioners will now begin discussing the case. Would anyone like to begin discussing the case or the item regarding the signage?
I really had no intent other than to find out what happened to the sign. So for me, I think the project's very strong. It's always great to see a property rehabilitated rather than raised. So I commend the owner and the team, the design team and construction team.
My only comment was the same question. If the documents that were presented that pushed this project along had the signage at the top that showed the historic character, if that should be there, but I agree.
Commissioner Sutton or DeCubis?
I too have a certain regard to the original proposal for the signage. We had in part a character that harkened back to the original bottling plant where that band was used for the signage of the building. I thought that was a nice touch as part of the overall presentation of the design intent from the very get-go. But I don't see the alteration of your proposal, between your proposal from the original design to its actual execution at this point in time to be a deal breaker. I just think it's a missed opportunity.
They're just discussing the piece right now,
Oh,
so there's no, they're not asking questions.
I have no further comment.
So I would agree. I don't think having the letters or not having the letters is going to be, a deal breaker by any means, but I do think it is a nice kind of look back to what it was historically looking at. We do have an historic photo here, and it is take up kind of that banding with the letters. So, it might be something nice to have, just kind of give this building a little bit of character, but personally, I don't see it being a big concern. Are there any other items?
None for me, sir.
Would a commissioner like to make a motion?
You can go. I move to approve the ad valorem tax exemption application part 2 for the plans presented at this public hearing in case number ARC T21-01 for the property located at 3108 North Jefferson Street in the Tampa Heights Historic District for the rehabilitation of this property because based on the facts in the record, the proposed project is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we are. Commissioners, moving down the agenda to our next item. This is ARC 21-109. This is a project located in the Tampa Heights Historic District at 403 East Idlewild Avenue. Seminole Heights Historic District. This is a application for a certificate of appropriateness for additions and site improvements. Moving to the photo presentation, here we have the location map showing the boundaries, the local and national historic district boundaries for Seminole Heights, the local in red and the national in blue. Looking at the 1920 Sanborn map of the subject property, it's located in Idlewild, which you can see that the Sanborn indicates it was once known as Grove Street there, but it's on Idlewild in between Branch and Central Avenues. This is the present day aerial of the subject property, again on Idlewild, and you can see the tree coverage along the property there. This is looking at the front of the subject site, so we're looking south of the house. Looking here on the along the east side of the house. And this is the west side of the house. There's some of the details on the existing structure, the grouped windows, the pretty typical window casing and sill that you will see in the bungalows in the Seminole Heights area. You can also see the exposed rafter tails and the siding profile pretty well in this photo. Looking at some of the roof details here, you can see the beadboard soffit, the bracket holding up the barge rafter, and again you can notice the profile of the siding there. So this is the property to the east, 405 Idlewild, and this is the house to the west. Looking across the street, this is the property across Idlewild. And then this is a view looking along Idlewild Avenue, I believe towards Central Avenue. and then looking west, back toward Branch Avenue. So at this time, we'll request that the applicant can begin his presentation.
I haven't been sworn.
We're going to do the swearing next.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be providing is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening. I'm Alan Dobbs, 5502 North Cherokee Avenue. I am working with the Culligans on this. They've been in the neighborhood for a while. And their house is on a sort of an oversized lot. It's fairly deep. And they really, functionally, they wanted to do something about their driveway condition. And then also, the side entry is a little awkward, so they wanted to create a side porch. And we looked at an option of a side porch that transitioned to a rear porch. But that was more than what they wanted to do, so we just did a small side porch. And then they wanted to convert one of the bedrooms into more of a master suite, because right now they just have one bathroom for the house, and they wanted to add a bathroom. So that's what the rear addition is. It's a fairly modest addition on the back. So I'll start with the site plan, and I see it's up on the screen. And this, can y'all hear me okay? This microphone work?
Yes,
Okay.
you're fine. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so right now there is no curb cut. They drive over the curb and the grass. So we're going to do an apron typical of the historic form on the flared apron on the driveway. Part of the sidewalk, if it needs to be repaired with this, we'll repair it and match as closely as possible the existing sidewalk. And then we'll have ribbon driveway up to the front building line. And then that's where we'll have a parking pad. And then beyond that, there's an existing fence right here that they like having it there. It's just a small 4-foot fence, but it contains their backyard because they have a pet. And basically right now they've just parked side by side here. So what we're proposing is just to do sand set brick pavers in this area right here. So they'll either park here and go in, or park here, go in through a gate here, and then into the porch on this side, or, oh, that's great.
And could you also, if you're looking at the bottom of your
Oh, yeah,
page,
oh,
just-
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Thank you.
Move it up. Yeah, okay, yeah. So this is where they can park, are currently parking side by side, so another option is to come in, through the back. The addition here is just a small addition off the back, just large enough for having a bathroom and a closet. You can begin to see the roof form for the building. It's a front-facing gable with a smaller inset gable over the front porch. And then across the back, there's a cross gable that bumps out here, and you can see how these ridges, you'll see this in the elevations. And then, so look at the floor plans. Obviously, y'all looked at the floor plans, but this shows the existing right now. So this is currently their bedroom, so they're gonna redo their kitchen, redo this existing utility porch, take one of these windows and convert it to a door to access this area back here. And then of course the side porch will be here, and it will be inset on each side, and it will come out, I think it's actually 8 feet, no, 10 feet, I'm sorry. And then the proposed plan you can, their kitchen is reconfigured. Right now, the entrance to the porch is here. That turns into a window. And this has all windows here, so we add a door there. Makes this room much more functional, so they could have like a bench here or something, and then a stackable washer and dryer. And then the porch here with the steps to the front and to the back. And then the addition, you can just see there's a small closet and a bathroom. You know, we have a window on this side and a window on this side. Functionally, it was really hard to get windows on all three sides. So this was the side that we sort of sacrificed because it's the least obvious side of the house, and it's also where we have our air conditioning equipment and a tankless gas water heater attached to the wall. The front elevation, you can see this is where the addition is. And originally, what I had proposed was to do an open porch with columns that came all the way down to the porch deck. But my clients really wanted to have the bottom portion of it enclosed. And there's actually precedent for that in the neighborhood. So basically, this is enclosed, but you can see that the column turns into a corner board. So this is all screened here. And then you can see that the to get the roof, this will show better on the side elevation, but the roof on the porch, we did a hip, again, to sort of play down that. We looked at an option of doing a side-facing gable, but we felt it's more appropriate to do a hip roof. Again, there's precedent in the neighborhood for that sort of thing. And then this is looking at from the side, so here you can kind of see how it's stepped in and it stepped down to differentiate new from existing. We have the exposed rafter tails. One of the things that's a little different from the drawings that you guys have is these center columns here. We went ahead and brought them down and they became finished boards because this was a little too long and horizontal, and it sort of worked with the rhythm of the columns and the piers. Initially, with the addition, we were thinking about, to save costs, doing some sort of wood lattice foundation screen enclosure, which is very appropriate, but this house currently has brick lattice, and my clients felt very strongly they want to keep that brick lattice on the addition, so that's what we're showing here and here. So in the wall section, basically we're going to have 2x6 rafter tails with beadboard on the underside and 2x4 frame construction, and then suspended wood floor. And then because this house is so high, we're actually having the joist.
I'm sorry, could you?
Oh, I'm
slide
sorry.
in?
I'm sorry. You're right.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's kind of nice having the detail here.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I just have to remember to move it. And then the foundation screen enclosure, you can see we'll have CMU piers with thin brick that will match the existing, and then we'll have the brick screen underneath. And then on the screen porch, I meant to point this out on the elevations, but we actually have a little bit less of an overhang on the porch. It's a smaller structure, and also we avoid one of the windows by having a smaller 18-inch overhang, but we still have the 2x6 rafter tails. And then we have the porch beam, and then this is the screen enclosure, and then this, remember this time to move it up, and then all these lines, they basically represent, you have the wall, and then you have the finished siding, and then you have the that finished board that I was talking about. Down here at the bottom is a water table or drip cap that aligns with the, which you'll see on the elevation, and then a 2x10 band that goes around. The window details are fairly typical. We're going to obviously have wood windows, but we have the 1.5-inch side casing. It's either 4 3/4 or 4.5, but we're matching the existing, so you get the sort of proper profile panning where the windows sort of step back. We have the heavier sill, which you can see in this picture here. And then on the head casing, again, they just have a simple drip cap and then a head casing which will match the existing. I had meant to start with some of the pictures to point out a few of the details, but I think I can do that now. This picture shows the foundation screen enclosure fairly well, and also I think Elaine had a nice picture of the windows, but they're just all simple 1/1s, which is what we're proposing. This shows the existing fence. There's a gate right there, so they either park out here. See, they have no driveway right now. Actually, there's a car parked there now, and then that's the door they go in. These awnings obviously will be coming off. There's a little closer picture. The back. Oh, and then also note this lattice. It's sort of a diamond-shaped lattice. I hadn't seen that before in Seminole Heights, but it's typical on all the gable ends, and we'll be replicating that. And then this is a picture of the rear. So this is where we're going to take this one window right here and then turn it into a door. And I just realized I didn't show the rear elevation, so let me go ahead and do that right now. So you can So this part of the porch is just like the front, but here you can see those are the two existing windows remaining. This window, too bad we can't just take the window we took out and put it here, but unfortunately the building code and the building department won't let us do that, so we'll replicate it the best we can. And then it has that diamond-shaped lattice that I talked about, and then the little corbelled brackets here we will do as well. One other thing, I mentioned the band at the porch. We don't have the band on the house, so the band is only at the porch. And that's because originally that was the porch floor, and we were just going to have full height columns, but we wanted to keep that band to make it look like this wall was done later. Again, there's precedent for that in the neighborhood. Show the front elevation. I took a kind of a close-up on the front elevation. Elaine had some good pictures, but this shows that diamond lattice in a little more detail. It shows the siding, which is basically a 1x6 that's cut so that it has two smaller lap sidings. So we'll be replacing that kind of siding, or matching that kind of siding. And then you see the brick lattice. As far as some of the details, the screen door, typically screen doors have smaller type of hardware, but this is probably what we'll do on the screen door. It has a smaller plate and it's sort of a dark bronze finish. I mentioned, or I didn't mention, but the finished roof material will be dimensional asphalt shingles, which is typical of most of the homes in Seminole Heights now. But these are Timberline. HD slate is the, actually it's Timberline HD, but slate is the color, but they may choose a different color to match the existing roof. And then as far as lighting, really the only lights that you'll see, there'll be lights on the porch, but you won't really see it because of the screen, but we'll do a wall sconce on either side of the door because the code does require that you have exterior lighting. And let's see, I think I covered everything in the points. All the materials and trim, like the casing, window and door casing, things like that will match the existing. I talked about the gable end. Doors and windows, the windows will be wood, as I mentioned, because it is a contributing historic structure. And then the porch materials, I think I had kind of went through that as well. you don't really see the porch floor, but it's gonna be three-quarter inch tandem groove like the front porch, and it will be painted, but you really won't see it from the exterior. So with that, I've concluded my presentation.
Thank you.
Commissioners, Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. Staff found that this application was consistent with the Seminole Heights Design Guidelines. We did not have very many conditions in the staff report, so with that, I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we will open the hearing to any public comment. Seeing none, the commissioners will now ask questions regarding the project. Anyone like to begin?
Yes, I'd like to begin, please, sir. Can we return to your rear elevation, identifying us the addition to the bedroom, bathroom addition? Thank you very much. You put a shallow hip roof over your porch to diminish its mass and bulk with respect to the remaining of the elevation of the building in terms of its composition. Did you look at that same sort of a condition here for this bump out addition for this bedroom? Something of a hip nature that would also diminish its bulk? Because I find that one of the items here in this addition, I understand its utilitarian nature, that with a gable face as it has that does not align with the gable peak of the roof makes things very awkward. And I'm wondering if perhaps if this were done more with a shallow hip roof as you've done over the porch, if this awkwardness would be more mitigated.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. The way I would respond to that is typically when we do an addition to a house or a contributing structure like this, if say we're adding conditioned space and things like that, generally we want to try and keep the align the roofs and things like that. We definitely want to differentiate new from existing, by offsetting and things like that. But I felt if we did a hip or a shed or something like that, that it would be sort of a foreign form to the house. Whereas, a hip roof like what we're doing on the porch is very common for a porch being kind of a secondary mass. But I do understand what you're saying about the ridge of the addition not aligning with the main ridge of the house. And unfortunately, elevations are sort of an abstraction of reality, so you would never really see it like that. And it is on the back of the house, and it just seemed like the gable form was the most appropriate form for this rear addition.
So you opted for the gable form
Yes.
as a replication because of the diagonal lattice, that diamond lattice.
Well, just because the house is predominantly gables, there's no hips on it, so we're introducing a new roof form with the hip, but we felt that was appropriate for the porch, but not for the addition in the back.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a detail for the stair railing?
No, I don't. I can talk about it in a little more detail. I can maybe zoom in on it. I guess it's okay if I touch this. It's a very simple stair and railing. Actually, you'd see that this is open here, but basically we just have like 3/4 or 5/4 treads, and then we continue that detail back, so it's enclosed on the side. And then this is just a 4x4 newel post that has a simple cap to it, and then this is like a 4x2 and a 2x4, and then these are actually vertical. Typically do like 2x2, or which are 1.5 inch square pickets with a 4-inch space between them, which is just kind of a generic but very simple wood railing. And I'd certainly understand if that's a condition of the approval that we provide a more accurate detail for staff to review.
I don't have any additional questions.
Can we go back to the site elevation? Can you zoom it back out?
Yeah, certainly.
Actually, you can just zoom a little bit right there.
Oh.
That's perfect.
Okay.
So that's what I saw it. From afar, it looked like both of those roof slopes said 12.4 and 12.4, and I was like, wait, they don't look the same. And now I see it's 12.6 and 12.4. You had mentioned several times that there was precedent for the moves that you were making on the side porch. Do you have any images of those precedent moves that you could share with us today?
It's funny, I inadvertently did not bring pictures with me. My office actually at 5502 Cherokee, it has, it's a very simple 2-1 bungalow. It has a front and rear gable, and then on the porch, it has a hip roof that is set below that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have any pictures.
Okay, thank you.
Just one question. Did you have any detailing for the screen material that you're going to use?
Of the screen? No, I don't. It would definitely be a very minimal sort of screen stop. And I didn't really show any kind of screen frame, heavy screen frame, because usually you want that to sort of disappear. So usually the way we do screens in something like this is if the screen frame is a darker, like dark bronze or something, or musket brown, I think is one of the standard colors. And then you use the charcoal screen. So those are dark and they all read as one material. And then you have the white columns, and then so then the screen just kind of disappears, but it would definitely be a fabric screen. I know the ARC in the past has talked about, you know, copper and things like that that were used historically, but that's so expensive and not feasible for most people. And so fabric screens, especially the darker charcoal ones, they just sort of like disappear, and that's sort of our design intent.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for either staff or the applicant?
Let me grab my folder, because I had shown my clients some of those samples, and I'm thinking I might have one in my folder of,
Okay.
the hip roof. So just a second. I might have left them the pictures with them, but I thought I would at least check. Okay, no, sorry, I don't have a picture.
Thank you. I don't have any additional questions. At this point, if there's no additional questions, then the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
I guess the only thing I'd just like to sort of reinforce is the form of the porch being an additive element on the side of an existing contributing structure. It is fairly prominent. And typically when you do have a porch as an additive element, that the roof is typically secondary to the main roof. In other words, it sort of steps down, typically has a lower slope. Sometimes it even has a different material. And so that was the intent with this porch. And then also by stepping it in on the sides as well, we're able to avoid, and having the smaller overhang, we're able to, you know, differentiate new from existing, and also avoid conflicts with one of the existing windows with the smaller overhang. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this point, we will close the public hearing, and commissioners will now discuss the case. Would a commissioner like to begin?
overall, I really, really like this little porch. I can see this how it can be a very distinctive addition to living space, particularly exterior living space. And I particularly find it quite handsome in how it melds itself to the existing building. Overall, I'm much happier with the entire envelope presentation and the entire envelope placement for this porch, more so than I am for the rear addition.
I wanted to comment on the discussion about the rear addition and the roof line and the appropriateness of that selection. I personally and professionally feel that the gable is the correct move there. It flows very nicely within that elevation. And even though I know we can see that as a service unit to the primary structure, it just, to me, it seems to move more eloquently with the gable forms that sit behind it. I actually am uncomfortable with the hip at the porch because my experience with houses of this era in various neighborhoods is that they are, if they're gable, and they do sit more diminutively and they do have smaller overhangs, but they complement that rather than move against what is already in that inherent language for form and shape. So I'm actually more uncomfortable with the porch. I find it, it seems to emulate like a summer cottage feel to me, rather than the country cottage sort of aspect of this tiny home from, you know, its existing appearance. So it seems a little foreign to me in the moves. I also feel that the elevation where, the side elevation of the porch where the posts come down as boards seems foreign to the language. The horizontal aspect of the siding, reading throughout the building, that horizontal language and move and fluidity is important in the porch. And I know that, you know, we often encourage additions to be different so that one can make note of the fact that they were additions to the historic structure, but I just feel the move here is a little awkward architecturally.
I understand your point.
I don't object to either. I think both are done in a way that in the future, if one were to bring this back to the original form of the historic building, it could be easily done. I don't object to any of the, they're all different from what we see over and over again, but not so foreign that it feels uncomfortable.
For me, I think I would agree. I don't object to either roof line. I think for me, the only sort of issue that just seems a little odd is the exterior wall finish and the trims of how the columns come down and those then become the corner boards, and then how you kind of separate that. If you look at the existing front porch, it does have a really nice horizontal kind of language, either from the railings or the siding that's under it, and it's not broken down at all. Otherwise, for me, it's, you know, I don't have really a big issue with how the roof lines are for the rear or for the porch. Are there any additional items that the commissioners would like to discuss? Or do we need to discuss the roof lines or anything further?
I'm generally, I find this a pretty solid project. I mean, scale, proportion, respect for the materials, it's all consistent.
Okay. The commissioner would like to make a motion with the project?
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 21-109 for the property located at 403 East Idlewild Avenue, because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Seminole Heights design guidelines for the city of Tampa for the following reasons. The orientation, massing, trim and details are consistent with the guidelines.
Oh.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, before we move on to the next case, if we could do the swear-in for the staff and for the applicants, please.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be providing this evening is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening. I am Lyle Breeze. I'm the agent for. I'm going to do a photo essay just with the staff for just a moment.
Sure.
Before the applicant moves forward, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Ron Vila. I'm staff with Historic Preservation. The next case on the agenda is ARC 21-106. This is for the address of 703 South Newport Avenue. The primary structure is a contributing structure that dates back to 1913. The zoning classification is RS60. The request in front of you this evening is for new construction for an accessory structure with some site improvements. The total square footage of the accessory structure is 900 square foot, and this was reviewed by land development, and it meets the criteria. As we go through the photo essay, you'll see an accessory structure that's on the site. That is new construction. It's a non-contributing structure, and it dates back to 2001. A prior board reviewed that two-story accessory structure, and at this time, the request is to remove that one. They're going to demo that, which that is administrative function that we could remove that non-contributing structure. And then the request in front of you this evening is to build a new accessory structure in approximately the same location. Starting with the Sanborn map that is on your monitors. It's the second parcel in from Swan. It is on Newport, and there is an alley that runs north and south behind the parcel, which is indicated in the green shaded area. If you look here at 1929, the Sanborn indicates that the accessory structure was located kind of midway through on the south property line. If you look at the pattern of a lot of the other accessory structures within the Hyde Park Historic District, they're more towards the rear of the property line, but this one was indicated here. And that's approximately the location that they're going to show this evening. This is our vicinity map, so you get a bearing of exactly where it is in the Hyde Park Local Historic District. It's shaded in the green area again. You have Swan Avenue that runs to the north. Obviously, you have Bay Shore to the south, and then you have Hyde Park Village to the west. This is an overhead shot. There are some tree issues. This did go through the DRC. Natural Resources did comment on this, and the footprint that he's providing is acceptable. This is the front elevation of the contributing structure. This is the abutting property to the north, and you see their drive out on their accessory structure. This is the north elevation of the primary house. This is the front elevation of the contributing structure at 703 Newport. This is the south elevation, and then you see the accessory structure that is non-contributing kind of peeking above. This is looking down the drive aisle at that accessory structure. And just a little closer shot trying to look around the cars there, but this is the structure that was built in 2001 that will be removed as part of this request. Some of the features on the primary house are the fin gable ends. You see the overhangs with the B-board. Another gable end. Series of 1/1 windows with the corner boards and the smaller profile of the weather of the lap siding. This is that structure to the north. That was in an earlier shot. This is the abutting structure to the south. Property that we're going to discuss is over here. And that concludes the photo presentation. At this time, Mr. Breeze will address the board.
Okay, again, my name is Lyle Breeze, and I'm the agent for Daryl and Francis Farley Snabes, who are present this evening. And again, the property is 703 South Newport. in Hyde Park. The site plan, I've shown an existing site plan which indicates the structure that we're proposing to demolish. And then the new site plan shows the structure that we're proposing to replace it with. And also replacing the driveway strips and providing a parking apron in front of the garage. In addition, part of the project, in order to maintain the required drip separation between roof lines, there's an existing screen porch on the house that we're going to cut back 2.5 feet in order to be able to comply with that drip requirement. These are the elevations of the proposed structure. You see the front elevation here, the garage doors. It's a single garage door made to replicate a double garage door. We provided an eyebrow above, which would be a shingled roof eyebrow, and you can see it has brackets underneath it projecting on the front of the structure. And then at the second level, we actually have a gable to the front, which is a pitch to match the pitch on the existing house. And then in order to get the space above, the bonus space above the garage, we went to more of a shed pitched roof on the bulk of the second floor, which you can see right here. And then the rest of this in the back is all unenclosed loggia and second porch, or second level balcony with an open stairway. The rear elevation, you can see this is the open balcony up above. The garage actually has a 12-foot ceiling in it, so the door exiting the second level balcony is raised here, and the stairway then comes down to a landing, to a second landing, which is the balcony level, and then down to the first floor. This area in here would be the open loggia area. And there is an elevator in the structure in order to be able to access all 3 levels. Some of the detailing, you saw an elevation of the front of the garage, the existing garage. What we're trying to do is to replicate a lot of these elements with the garage doors, with the gable over the garage, or instead of the gable, we're doing the eyebrow on the front. And then again, on the second floor, we have a window which is in the actual bathroom area of the second floor. This is a picture of the existing screen porch, and if you look, here is where the projection is from the existing house. It projects 2.5 feet. What we're proposing to do in order to get the drip line to line up is to push this section of screen back to line up with this roof overhang here. And then that gives us the drip edge separation between the screen porch and the new structure. And this is just a side elevation of the porch. The existing porch, we're proposing to simply replicate all of these elements, but push them back to 2.5 feet. This is a screen porch, and we will retain it as a screen porch. The new loggia area and the accessory structure will be an open area. This is an example of the existing shingles, and we're proposing to replicate those on the new structure. They also match the shingles on the existing main house. And this is a little closer detail on some of the elements of the, what is the existing structure, the existing accessory structure, which we're going to demolish and replace. Primarily the siding and the corner beads, or the corner boards with, they actually have an eased edge on the corner board. The roof overhangs, replicated that. The windows, the headers on the windows and the side casings on the windows, and then the horizontal siding, again, using all those elements on the new structure. This is the typical wall section. You can see at the ground level, we're doing a monolithic footing and slab, but I'm actually using one course of block as a curb in order to raise the siding above the grade level to maintain a 6-inch clearance on that. And that again, if you look at this elevation, you can see at the bottom of the structure there is a masonry element at the bottom of the structure, and that's what allows us to keep the siding up above the grade level. The windows will be wood windows to match the existing house. The siding again will match the siding that existed on the original accessory structure. The second level, we are doing a 12-foot ceiling in the garage with a conventional floor system. The second level, the wall height will be 6'6", which is why we went to a lesser pitch on the roof in order to be able to get the required headroom at the outside wall, according to code. And again, wood windows with interior trim boards and exterior header with flange on top. And I think that is what I have to show you.
Mr. Breeze, that completes your presentation?
Yes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Avila, staff with Historic Preservation. The application is consistent with the Hyde Park Design Guidelines with the plans that we reviewed on January 15th, 2021. Some of the conditions that are reflected on the staff report on page 3 is that if this project is to move forward, a design exception is required. I believe he's in the process, but he could put some additional information on the record. The second bullet item is for Mr. Breeze to discuss a little bit of the form and the function of this building. There's a unique design elements that are associated with this request, and that's more of a form function. And I think he could elaborate to give you a little more information on that. To provide additional information on the hardscape, the driveway to be specific, and the walkways around the property. Provide the location of the mechanicals on the site plan. And he did address some modification that is needed to provide the eave-to-eave separation to meet City of Tampa code. So as we were working on this project moving forward to the public hearing tonight, the need for the modification to the screen porch came up. The screen porch was not advertised as part of this request, so I would advise the commissioners this evening just to focus on the hardscape that was advertised and then the new accessory structure. And the screen porch would either have to come back or be done at the administrative level. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
At this point, we will open the public hearing to any public comment. If anyone would like to speak either for or against the project. Okay. At this point, the commissioners will now ask questions. I have a question for staff regarding a comment that Ron made. So if we can't kind of review or discuss the screen porch getting updated, and that's gonna be kind of handled at a separate kind of function. How will that play into the fact that if that doesn't either get passed, or if we pass this for a CA and then it comes before us in the future, or in the, you know, later on, that we have to either review it and pass it? If it doesn't work, do they have to come back again for the accessory structure?
I would review the accessory structure independent of the screen porch. The screen porch was an addition some time ago, so it was not an original character defining feature to the contributing structure. So the modification to that screen porch at about 2.5 feet to have it parallel with that side facade is probably something that we'd look at administratively, and as long as the architectural elements are consistent to what's there now, we'd probably approve it.
Okay, thank you. Any of my fellow commissioners have any questions they would like to ask?
I think we should just start maybe by going through these conditions by staff. So the first one is provide an update on the DE1.
Yeah, the DE1 has been, the application has been filed and it's in process.
Can you walk us through the overall form and function of this structure?
Well, the function is actually to increase the available garage space. So the existing accessory structure was a one-car garage with a little bit of extra storage. And there was kind of a loft space above that provided storage, but it was not usable for any habitable purposes. So the intent is to increase the garage area by widening the garage to 18 feet. And then in doing that, then providing a bonus space above that is actual habitable space, be used as I say, a bonus space recreation area. There is a bathroom upstairs. The driveway, you saw in the one elevation, there are driveway strips, but we're looking to replace those with 3 foot, 3 foot, and 3 foot space between. And then because there wasn't actually, other than the driveway ribbons, there wasn't an actual parking space on site, so providing the apron in front of the garage affords the parking space outside of the garage.
Can you provide all hardscape materials, including the driveway and walkways?
I'm sorry, say again?
One of the conditions is to provide all hardscape materials, and Ron elaborated and said that'll include the driveway and walkways, the materials.
Yeah, we can provide that. I don't have those with me tonight other than the photograph.
Just a description of your intention is fine.
Well, again, the intention is to replicate what's there. But the driveway strips that were existing were a little bit narrower, and we're proposing to make them. They're still concrete, but we're proposing to make them 3 foot, 3 foot with a 3 foot space in between, which will probably again be brick or might be landscape material.
Can you provide the location of your mechanical equipment?
Mechanical equipment will be falls behind this structure right here, which was a former porch that had been enclosed as a sun porch. So the mechanicals are right back here.
Are those existing for the house, or is that also going to be where the units for the new garage is going to be located?
I'm sorry, those are for the existing house. The new garage ones will be along this rear area here.
I'm going to hand it off for now.
I have a follow-up question to the form and function component of the list from staff. Why is there a 12-foot high ceiling space on your ground floor for your garage?
Actually, the intent is to install a lift in the garage so that we get a two-car garage width, but actually, essentially, 4 cars could be parked in the garage.
And
The
the lift,
existing structure that's being demolished or proposing to demolish had a 12-foot ceiling in it to begin with.
okay, and the lift, the purpose of that is storage, not a component like a repair.
No, not at all. It is actually strictly for car storage. The owners are a collector of cars. They've got a couple of sports cars that they want
Understood.
to be able to park on the upper part of the lift.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sutton or DeCubis?
I have no question at this time.
I have none either.
Could we look at your elevations quickly?
Sure.
So I see it circled there, but it's hard to read.
Yeah.
What
it
is the
was-
height?
Yeah, it was pointed out to me that measure of 22.5 feet, which is the D1 that we're applying for, it has to be measured from the grade, not from the garage slab. So that was altered to indicate that we are measuring from the grade.
Okay. And then, was there any sort of, consideration given to looking at how either on the front and the rear elevation? So we're seeing a good amount of kind of roof edges and kind of profiles. So on the front, you have really 3 within that kind of that side angle. And then on the back side or the rear, you see almost 4 separate roofs.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything kind of looked at or designs to try to make it all kind of blend in or reduce that kind of image?
Well, part of the rationale is if you look at the rear elevation, we've actually stepped the side wall of the loggia, stairway, balcony area. We've stepped it in from the side wall of the actual garage and bonus structure, so that it isn't, you can see that here, the line right here, so that it isn't so massive on that elevation. And then by opening up the second level, piercing that wall, we're getting a little bit more open area rather than so much massing. As far as the levels, again, on the bonus room, in order to get the required exterior wall height and ceiling height required by code, we had to, the minimum I wanted to go with on that is 6.5 feet, and in order to do that and stay under the 22.5 foot requirement, we had to change the pitch of that roof, which is why we have roof separation. If you look at the front section, that was deliberately intended to kind of bring the height of the roof down on the front elevation and to also replicate the pitch of the main house.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's maybe just the graphical representation or just maybe I'm not fully understanding. So on the left side of the building, we're going to be seeing really just almost solid wall beyond where the garage is, besides the small window and then that open patio on the left, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so then behind that, we're going to have staircases that are open, and that's what you can kind of see on that rear elevation.
Yeah, right here, staircase going up.
Okay, so is that stair on the right side elevation also visible, or is there a wall that's kind of hiding it?
Actually, yes, it would actually be visible on the right side elevation. You would see it coming down right here.
Okay. And then on the rear, so it looks like I'm kind of in between this, it looks like maybe the second level. Is there a small window that's adjacent to that door that's kind of up at the top?
You're talking about right there?
Yes.
No, actually what that is a plinth, because we need, I think, 3 risers coming down from the upper level, the bonus area. We need 3 risers coming down in this direction, and I showed that as a plinth in order to be able to kind of have something to tie the railing, the upper railing right here to, and something to kind of block the view of those 3 risers coming down to the landing, which is right here. There's an upper landing here and then a second landing at the porch level, the balcony level.
And then, do you have off, maybe either written down or off the top of your head, what's the overall footprint of the structure?
This structure here is the footprint. So you see the garage is this section, and then the rear section is the loggia and upper balcony and stairwell.
But do you know how dimension-wise you said the garage is 18 feet wide?
The garage is 18 feet wide, the rear section is 15 foot wide.
Okay. And then do you know how deep it is from the beginning of the garage all the way to the very back?
Yes. The garage section is 24 foot in depth, and the rear section is 21 foot 8 inches in cut.
Thank you. Are there any additional, actually, sorry, I have one additional question. Was there any sort of design looked at for that back portion with the stairs and maybe a different configuration or the patio to where you were able to reduce that footprint so that way it wasn't as large?
Well, actually what I was trying to do is to accommodate what the owners had suggested they were looking for. So this is really kind of a picture of what they were telling me they wanted in terms of exterior space.
Okay. Are there any additional questions from my fellow commissioners? Okay. At this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
I don't think I really have a rebuttal.
Well, at this point, then we'll close the public hearing and the commissioners can now discuss the case. Would anyone like to begin or have anything they'd like to talk about?
I wholly understand how this accessory structure, its size, its orientation, its bits and pieces are highly driven by its program, and some of which we are privy to this evening and some of which we are not. This, to me, is an example where a proposal for a new structure perhaps would have benefited our review if we had at least some sort of an inkling as to what the arrangements of the interior were all about. Because I find myself very uncomfortable with the overall appearance of this accessory structure in comparison to the more tailored appearance of the original dwelling that's on this site. And I'm having a hard time rectifying the two.
I agree. I agree too. I think it's very complicated. And I really can't picture what that back part is going to look like based on these drawings and all the different landings, and it's just complicated.
Well, honestly, I think even from the front facade, I think from the street, it starts off a little confused about what it's supposed to be doing.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff going on, and I feel like it's not refined, not as refined as the primary structure. And there are a lot of additions to this primary structure, but when you start to look at how they engage, they seem to understand where they belong, and I feel like the structure is struggling to understand the language it needs to respond to. There are just so many things going on with the roofs, and the push in at the upper elevation, even from the street view, seems very awkward. So just from an architectural form standpoint, I feel like the project is just not there yet.
I would tend to agree. I think there's the sort of the overall shape and mass of the building and that project I think could really have a second look at it. I think there are ways and opportunities to kind of refine not only the roof profiles and the edges, but I think just the overall footprint and size, the accessory structure is even though it's only about 900 square feet, probably enclosed or conditioned, it's taking over almost 1,600 square feet, kind of once you take everything into account, which starts to just look really large in comparison. And when you get something that big, I think some of these little details are starting to just look even bigger than they are. So I would agree with my fellow commissioners, is I think there just needs to have a second kind of round on looking at this and figuring out how you can look at how some of these profiles and these edges relate to each other to just clean it up a little bit. Anything else?
Would it be helpful for you to see the actual floor?
I'm sorry, unfortunately right now,
Okay.
we can't have any more discussions. Thank you.
Other than the discussion we just had, you know, material-wise, they're on the right track, even the landscape, hardscape, on the right track. It really is that larger question of how it resides in its context. for
Is
me-
this an
for me.
appropriate mass? Is this an appropriate form?
Yeah, I think we all agree.
I believe staff just discussed with you that the two options you would have is we can vote on, you know, make a motion for this, or we can do a continuance. Just wanting to see if you have an opinion.
Have you made a motion?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office. I'm sorry, they cannot give you a preview of what the motion will be.
Oh.
You need to make a decision whether or not you want the commissions to go forward with the motion, or do you want to ask for continuance?
Okay. I guess the only thing I can say is if it isn't going to be approved, then I would certainly want to vote for, or ask for a continuance.
Are you confirming that with your client, or are you?
Yes, they're in agreement?
Commissioners, I would recommend that you look at the March 1st public hearing date. And then if there's more time that's needed, we can discuss that with the applicant and the agent in the meantime.
Thank you, Dennis.
I move to grant a continuance in case ARC 21-106 for the property located at 703 South Newport Avenue to the March 1st public hearing at 6 o'clock.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Avila, staff with Historic Preservation. The last case reflected on our agenda this evening is ARC 21-108 for the address of 1704 Jeton Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. It is a contributing structure that dates back to 1917. The zoning classification attached to this parcel is RM24. There's two requests. The first one is a variance that has two variances attached to that. That's reflected on your agenda and your staff report. The variance hardship criteria questions and answers are attached to the staff report as well, so you could follow along. The first variance is an east side yard setback from 7 foot to 3 foot with an encroachment of 1.5 feet for eaves and gutters. And the second variance request is a front yard setback from 25 feet to 16.25 feet with an encroachment of 1.5 feet for eaves and gutters. The request for the certificate of appropriateness was a new porte cochere. I would request that you open these together. It is going to be a brief presentation, and I think for you to understand what the agent is representing completely, it's to the benefit of the board. And then also, as we go through this, on your staff report as well on page 3, that there was a variance for a porte cochere that was also requested in November of 2020. That one was denied. The applicant had worked with staff. Staff felt that his request this evening is substantially different than the one that was denied. So he does not have to wait the 12 months in accordance with the code, and he could come this evening and present. So having said that, I'm going to go quickly through the photo presentation. That's on your monitor. This is 1704 Jatan, that's shaded in the green box. Obviously, Jatan is the front facade street, which is to the north. There is an alley that runs to the rear. And then you have Rome as a point of reference to the east, and you have Fremont to the west. This is the front elevation of 1704 Jatan. This is looking at the side elevation. You see the ribbons that are here, that obviously the vehicle comes down and enters the parcel. This is the open porch, and an engagement of the roof will be in this area here. This is looking from the street down the vehicular access and where the porte-cochere is going to be requested. This is the east elevation. Just another shot down the vehicular drive. And another one so you get an understanding exactly. You have a little retaining area here, then you have your strips for the ribbons and some natural turf in between. This is the west elevation. Looking more closely at the columns, if the porte-cochere is approved, he's going to have a rhythm of columns that is going to mirror what's here now. The mortar is a very unique mortar with this rose color. That should be replicated if it moves forward. This is the abutting structure to the west, and that concludes the photo presentation. At this time, Mr. Hadley will address the board.
Good evening. Is this the mic?
You need to change it. Thank you.
Should I be using this mic? Like generally use this?
It'll pick you up.
Okay, all right.
One more thing, Mr. Hadley, have you been sworn in?
No.
No.
At this time, Ms. Cusack will swear you in.
Sorry.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony that you provide in this evening is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Hadley, and I'm representing Drew Newman and Ariel Peters tonight. They recently bought a house in Hyde Park that they intend to add on to and renovate. And I presented, as Ron mentioned, I presented the project as a whole back in November. There's kind of three main components to the project. One is the addition on the rear of the house. There's a detached extended family residence, and then the porte-cochere of the driveway. So back in November, the variance request associated with the porte-cochere was denied. Since then, the main addition to the house and the extended family residence was approved in December, so thank you. We're moving ahead with that. But I'm here tonight to present the revised porte-cochere design, having incorporated the feedback we received back in November. So I'll kind of start from the top, but hopefully it sort of rings a bell and is kind of familiar as I go through it. Ron already showed the images of the existing conditions, but this is looking from the street. So you see the existing driveway, the existing walkway, the front porch, and the existing house. So this is represented in the site plan here, and I'll just focus on the area in question. So that represents the existing conditions, the concrete roof driveway, that are sort of kind of a random brick meandering path there that kind of makes its way to the backyard, but then the existing walkway, and then the covered porch. So back in November, we proposed the porte-cochere on the front because Drew and Ariel, simply put, just wanted they wanted cover over the driveway when they're unloading the car and making their way into the house. The feedback that we got was that because of the way we set the porte-cochere relative to the house, which was kind of two reasons behind the logic. One was to relate very directly to the historic portico next door, which is actually set back from the front of the house, which was maybe not typical, but because it was next door, we were kind of being deferential to it. And then the other reason we set it back was in order to, from a constructability standpoint, tie more easily into the existing roof of the house, which is right. We're proposing to kind of plug it in right here, as opposed to the front porch. So this is a shot of the existing roof line, and this is what we proposed back in November. So the commission pointed out that there was a little bit of a disconnect, we'll call it, between the stated hardship for the variance request and the design solution, because the design solution didn't provide for 100% coverage from the driveway to the covered porch. So we circled back up and revised the design to try to address the concerns that were raised then. And our strategy for the alternate design is simply put to pull the portico share forward to align directly with the front of the porch. So you can see these existing columns that Ron noted, and then the proposed new ones for the portico share. We made it as tight as possible to minimize the amount of variance infringement we have on the side yard, which is represented by the 3 foot here, by making the driveway as tight as possible. But you see the concrete ribbon and then the infill brick in between. And then this 16.3 is our front yard setback, which is really dictated by the alignment with the front brick columns. And this is a view of the roof lines and how they connect. So you can see the alignment with the front of the portico share roof there, with the porch. And then this is sort of the added complication, nothing that we can't overcome, but the kind of the added cricket that's required to shed rainwater properly. Ron noted some of the existing details, but I'll touch on them briefly again. This is the existing brick pier supporting the porch. You can see the brick detailing, the wood brackets, closer in, the exposed kind of rafter expression, as well as the underside of the roof decking, which is kind of a tongue and groove board with a V groove in it. So this is the front of the existing elevation of the existing front of the house, the north elevation. You see it there. And then this is with the addition of the portico share, right there. And so you can see very clearly the use of the brick piers on the portico share here, and pulling that clean kind of datum of the top of the pier all the way across. So you have a kind of clear architectural line that goes across the front elevation there, which results in approximately about a 10-foot clearance underneath. And then matching the existing slope of the porch roof here ties in to the existing porch roof. This is the existing east elevation from the driveway, so you see the porch in the background there. And then this is with the addition of the portico share there. This is a shot from the street, three-dimensionally, the existing. And this would be proposed right there. So in the same way that the addition that was approved back in December borrows very heavily from the existing house as far as architectural detail with the exposed rafter tails, the brick, the soffit expression, it would be, part and parcel to all of that was previously approved. And with that, I'll end my presentation.
Thank you. Could you read your
Oh,
7
yes.
hardships?
Yes.
Just for record, thank you.
Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I actually found it, thank you. There you go. Okay. So should I read both the prompt and the response, or just the response?
Both.
Both, okay.
Thank you.
Number 1, the alleged hardships or practical difficulties are unique and singular with respect to the property or with respect to a structure or building thereon, and are not those suffered in common with other property structures or buildings similarly located. The response is, presently the house lacks covered access to safely move between the house and a car during inclement weather. We, the owner, have an 8-month-old child and hope to have an additional children in the future, and we're worried about the safety of moving them between the house and a car during lightning and heavy storms in the rainy season. Number 2, the hardship or practical difficulty does not result from the actions of the applicant. A self-created hardship or practical difficulty shall not justify a variance. The response is, a lack of safe means to move between the house and a car in bad weather is a pre-existing condition. Number 3, the variance, if granted, will not substantially interfere with or injure the health, safety, or welfare of those whose property would be affected by allowance of the variance. The response is, this is true. The variance will not affect neighboring property owners. Instead, it will improve the health, safety, and welfare of our young family. Effort was made to minimize the encroachment of the portico share into the setbacks. Number 4, the variance is in harmony with and serves the general intent and purpose of this chapter and the adopted Tampa Comprehensive Plan. The response is, portico shares are very common in Hyde Park. The proposed portico share was intentionally designed to be consistent with those found throughout the neighborhood, particularly the one next door at 1706 West Jeton. The proposed portico share uses historic detail found in the existing house. Number 5, allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done, considering both the public benefits intended to be secured by this chapter and the individual hardships or practical difficulties that will be suffered due to a failure of the board to grant a variance. The response is, because the proposed variance will not negatively affect neighboring properties or others, the health, safety, and welfare benefits of providing a way to safely move between the house and a car in inclement weather would result in substantial justice if the variance is granted. And finally, number 6, the variance, if granted, will allow development that is consistent with the design standards and compatible with historic patterns of development within the historic district, historic conservation overlay district, multiple property designation, or the locally designated landmark or landmark site in which the subject property is located. And the response, because portico shares are common design elements in Hyde Park and the proposed portico share is designed to be consistent with those that are existing, the proposal is consistent with design standards and pattern development within Hyde Park.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Thank you. At this point, staff will present the staff report.
Commissioners, as you move forward to review the variance hardship criteria, I would advise the board to focus on the hardship and the drawings that were presented to back up the hardship that was expressed this evening. If the variance request does move forward, then we'll comment on the staff report for the certificate of appropriateness. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we will open the public hearing to any public comment for the variance. Seeing none, we'll move to the part for commissioners to ask questions for the variance only. Would a commissioner like to begin?
I have no question at this time, sir.
I have no questions regarding the variance.
I have a question for you. So I understand the side yard setback that we need looks to be pretty similar from both what was originally presented to what is shown today, correct?
Correct.
But the front is obviously different. Was there any consideration given or kind of looked at of how you may step back your new portico share so it doesn't kind of fall in line with your roof edge that's existing? Or was that kind of the really the only opportunity?
You know, we did not examine that. I think that the impulse to align it with the front gable form was I think just kind of a very clean way to resolve it. I think to push it back, we could have sort of partial coverage going from the porte cochere onto the porch. But simply put, no, we did not examine it in order to minimize that front yard setback encroachment.
Are there any additional questions for the applicant or staff for the variance? Okay. Well, at this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal.
None, but thank you for your consideration.
All right, we'll close the hearing. The commissioners can now discuss the case for the variance. Commissioner would like to begin. Commissioner Sutton.
I like the resolution of this porte cochere and the way it dovetails into its existing structure. I've seen a few of these kind of forward-facing, if you will, porte cochere extensions on porches in a variety of areas throughout the city of Tampa. And I've always found it quite attractive. And I do understand entirely, absolutely entirely, about the desire for having some undercover access, protected access, as an entry point to your to this dwelling, particularly for members of this family. However, it strikes me that this is Tampa, and a vast majority of buildings have been built over time, dwellings particularly, that never had and still do not have a covered way from wherever a vehicle may be parked on site to the dwelling in itself. And it's been like that almost since day one of Tampa in many respects. It's a wet place. So based on that as a statement, I understand the desire for the cover, that I do not see how that desire trumps, if you will, the lack of or trumps the fact that this hardship that we're claiming at this time is actually, in some regard, self-inflicted by the application of how do we solve the desire, which means I need a porte cochere, and that's going to encroach on front yard and side yards. I'm having a hard time rectifying that with the fact that I'm looking at an image right now of an intended final product, which is actually very, very, very quite attractive and actually has some sort of precedence. That's all I have to say for the moment.
No, you look really eager. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, as an attorney, I'm trained to look at language, and unique to the property or the structure, unique and singular. Those are the key words here. And kind of, as you pointed out, Commissioner Sutton, the weather here in Tampa is not necessarily unique to this particular property or structure. That's something we all deal with. However, I definitely understand the situation, being a mom of little ones myself. But I'm just having a hard time getting over the definition of a hardship as it is here on the paper.
So, I too understand it, having had those little ones. And even today, it's a struggle for me not having attached anything to my house. But I think sometimes we have to remember that setbacks that currently exist in these communities are zoning overlays from another time. And these neighborhoods existed at a different time in a different way that we lived with our streets. And honestly, you know, the client could have gone forward and asked for the existing setbacks to be grandfathered in and gone through that process. I don't, yes, it's something that the owner has put on themselves, right? They've said they needed this. However, to live in the modern world, you know, if they were to buy a house in the suburbs somewhere or build new in this neighborhood, they would have those opportunities to build in a manner that would allow them to have those covered conditions and be in the setbacks and things like that. And I think sometimes in our historic neighborhoods, we have to understand that to live comfortably in the modern world, sometimes the modern world needs to be reminded that these properties were designed for another time and that street presence was different. So being that much closer to the walk and the property line here, I think is not that uncomfortable and certainly not uncommon for the historic districts that we talk about in our meetings. But I do understand the legal complications.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything you said. I think it's a beautiful design. It's very consistent with the rest of the house. You know, just my attorney brain.
Kamaria Pettismaca from the City Attorney's Office. I just want to remind the commissioners, I hear the discussion about the time in which this property was built versus how it's currently being used, but I just remind the commissioners to follow to adhere to the guidelines for the hardship criteria, and that should be your determination on whether or not the variance should be granted.
Thank you. So I'm kind of in between. So I understand the concern with, you know, this was a condition that was, you know, present when the owners bought the house. So it was something that was known. So, you know, in that case, it was, you know, it was kind of understood of what was going to be coming with the house. I don't have an issue with adding a portico share to the house, and I think the variance for the side yard setback is kind of a given, just because with today's kind of larger cars, in order to really do anything, you kind of have to go that distance. There's no way to go in between or make it smaller. My only concern would be, we've seen a solution that was presented, that the applicant showed that was presented previously, and the solution here is kind of, you know, opposite ends. So one's all the way past the covered entrance, one is all the way up to the front. But there was never really kind of anything presented of showing why maybe something a little bit farther back might not have worked. So my question is so much for the commissioners is, yes, this condition works, yes, it looks nice, but is there another condition that would allow us to maybe reduce the variance at all and not have it as, you know, severe as it is?
So the initial solution that came before us in November, which he did show prior,
Yes.
pushed it back, but it didn't cover the access point.
Correct.
But I don't know this for sure, but not having that plan in front of us with a setback delineation to that 25 feet, I don't know that we can answer that without asking the agent.
Right, and that's my question is so, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking there's a way to set this back to where you have this brick kind of welcome wall at the stairs. Could that become your datum point to where your kind of your edge of your portico share kind of starts to where, yes, you're still covering that portion. Yes, it gets slid back. My question is so much, or my concern is really, we're looking at a hardship for a variance, and if this is a requirement, one concern, does it even kind of meet the requirements of a hardship because of the, just purely the weather? And then two, if we do go with that, are we comfortable with kind of going all the way to the very edge of the house?
So
well,
I
that's
think
where we were the first time at this, because the original portico share was pushed back all the way almost to the front face of the house, and that was conforming with the property setback for the front yard. So even if you wanted to push this thing forward and encompass the stair of the porch, you would still need a setback variance, because that's within the front yard.
I understand
So what's happening though, since we still have the side yard setback, that's under question of variance, and you have the question of hardship, if you're missing the connection entirely to the front porch, do you in fact have something that's going to comply for your hardship as stated, which is an undercover access? And the answer at the time was no, it doesn't happen. So we're looking at a project where things have been, we've finagled to the point where it's either you got coverage or you don't. And if you have coverage, you need that front yard setback, but it doesn't meet the criteria for hardship.
Well, even if you were to go with the initial one that's up on now from November, the variance requirements are still the same. So that argument of whether or not it even meets
Correct.
the variance is still there.
Correct.
That's really the only concern right now.
Right.
Are there any additional items you would like to discuss for the variance only? Or
I have no additional item.
would a commissioner like to make a motion on the variance?
Kamaria Pettis-Smackel again from the city attorney's office. There are two variances, so if you need to bifurcate bifurcate the variances one by one, it's within your purview to do that. You take one variance, take number one, make a motion.
Oh, I see, if they're gonna be different. I see, okay.
However, I think
That
the
makes sense.
discussion we just had makes that point moot.
Move, right.
Right.
Would anyone like to make a motion, or do we need to continue discussing?
Gotta find the right language. I move that the variance for the case ARC 21-108 for the property located at 1704 Jetong Avenue for a front yard setback from 25 feet to 16 feet with an encroachment of one.
It's 16.25, sorry.
16.25 feet with an encroachment of 1.5 feet for eaves and gutter be denied due to the failure of the petition to meet the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria and set forth in section 27-114D of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, specifically that hardship has not been shown to be other than self-inflicted.
And then, do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we have for the record, can we have a raising of the hands so that we could see the numbers, please? Okay.
Against?
Against? Thank you.
Motion
Yes.
passes. Thank you.
But we have to also address number one.
Yes. That would be a continuation of the same. I move that the variance for case ARC 21-08 for the property located at 1704 Jeton Avenue for a variance to the east side yard setback from 7 feet to 3 feet with an encroachment of 1.5 feet for eaves and gutter be denied due to the failure of the petitioner to meet the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria as set forth in section 27-114D of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, specifically that the manner of hardship is seen to be entirely self-inflicted.
All in favor? If you
You
could
have
raise,
a sec- you get-
oh, sorry.
You mean, there was just the first, there was just the, okay.
I second.
Thank you. And then, all in favor, if you, I guess, raise our hands again.
Aye.
And then, against?
Aye.
That fails, so we need another motion.
I move that the variance request for ARC 21-108 for the property located at 1704 Jatan Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a east side yard setback from 7 feet to 3 feet with an encroachment of 1.5 feet for eaves and gutters. Based on the petitioner meeting the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-114D for the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, for granting variances as stated in the evidence provided in this public hearing, specifically that no covered access is provided to the primary residence.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then,
Against?
against?
Nay.
Motion fails.
No, I'm sorry, I thought there was 3 to 2.
It was.
No, it was 2 to 3.
They reversed their votes from the last.
Okay, so that motion is failed.
Wait.
I changed my vote,
Oh,
so we have to do it again.
so you want us to scramble it all? You have to. You can't make
Sorry.
a motion.
Commissioner Sutton, would you like to make your first motion again, or would someone else like to make one? Sorry.
The same note, the same one?
Yes.
Let me begin again, please. Thank you. I'm still on, thank you. I move that the variance for the case ARC 1701 Jatan Avenue for a variance in the front yard setback from 25
Side yard
feet-
setback.
The front yard setback,
No, it's the east side.
The east side yard setback.
Number 1.
okay. Move the variance for the case ARC 21-108 for the property located at 1704 Jatan Avenue for an east side yard setback. Variance from 7 foot to 3 foot with an encroachment of 1 1/2 foot for eaves and gutters be denied due to the failure of the petitioner to meet the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-114D of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, specifically that the nature of the hardship is seen to have been self-inflicted.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. And then, do we need to do a continuance for the CA? Do we have a date?
Commissioners, I would recommend that you just continue this to March the 1st. We'll have to discuss this with the agent about a path forward. For the CA, continuance to March the 1st.
I move to grant a continuance in case ARC 21-108 located at 1704 Jatan Avenue to the March 1st public hearing at 6 p.m.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.